I'm gonna kill Aquaman.
Hi, baby boy. Talking to the fishies? You and me, son.
Free me from my prison.
He needs us. Son, we're different. We're special. I can't wait to introduce you to all the majestic creatures on our planet. Yeah! You and me.
Manta took Junior.
He must be stopped.
For you. Destroy everything he holds dear.
You want blood?
The movie Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, released in 2023, continues the story of Arthur Curry, who is now fully established as the king of Atlantis after the events of the previous film, and the world of the oceans has entered a new era where the kingdoms beneath the sea are trying to adapt to the leadership of a king who was once caught between two worlds. Arthur is not only the ruler of Atlantis but also a husband and a father, trying to balance the responsibilities of being a superhero, a king and a family man at the same time, which creates an interesting dynamic because his life above the ocean and his duties beneath it constantly pull him in different directions. The story begins with Arthur struggling to manage the complex political structure of the underwater kingdoms while also dealing with threats that could endanger both the surface world and the oceans. Atlantis is no longer simply a hidden kingdom because its actions and technology have begun influencing the global balance of power, and Arthur understands that every decision he makes as king can affect millions of lives both above and below the sea. However, the peace of Atlantis soon begins to crumble when a dangerous enemy from Arthur's past returns, seeking revenge and power greater than anything seen before. David Kane, also known as Black Manta, reappears stronger and more determined than ever after surviving the previous conflict, and he has discovered a mysterious ancient artifact connected to a forgotten civilization that once existed long before the rise of Atlantis. This artifact known as the Black Trident carries dark energy that corrupts anyone who tries to wield its power, and it becomes the source of Black Manta's new strength as he begins preparing a plan that could destroy Atlantis and reshape the balance of power across the oceans. While Arthur continues trying to maintain peace among the underwater kingdoms, he soon learns that Black Manta has started gathering allies and resources in order to launch a devastating attack against Atlantis. The situation becomes even more complicated when Arthur realizes that defeating this new threat will require help from someone he once considered an enemy, because his half-brother Orm, the former king of Atlantis who once tried to conquer the surface world, is now imprisoned and stripped of his power. Arthur understands that Orm may be the only person who knows enough about the ancient history of Atlantis and the lost civilizations hidden beneath the ocean to help him stop Black Manta before the dark power of the Black Trident spreads across the world. This uneasy alliance between the two brothers becomes one of the central themes of the film, because Arthur and Orm must learn to trust each other despite their complicated past and their very different views about the relationship between Atlantis and the surface world. Together they begin a dangerous journey across mysterious underwater regions, searching for the truth behind the ancient power that Black Manta has unleashed. Their quest leads them toward forgotten kingdoms hidden beneath the sea, including the legendary Lost Kingdom of Necris, a civilization believed to have vanished long ago after experimenting with forbidden energy sources that were too powerful to control. As Arthur and Orm investigate these secrets, they slowly uncover a deeper history about Atlantis and the ancient forces that once shaped the oceans, revealing that the danger they face is not only Black Manta himself but the dark energy of the Black Trident, which has the power to awaken destructive forces capable of threatening the entire planet. The film explores themes of brotherhood, responsibility, redemption, and the struggle between power and wisdom as Arthur learns that being king is not only about strength but about making choices that protect both the ocean and the surface world from dangers that neither civilization can face alone. Visually, the movie presents breathtaking underwater environments, including massive kingdoms, glowing coral cities, mysterious trenches filled with ancient ruins, and powerful ocean creatures that bring the world of Atlantis to life on a grand scale. The advanced visual effects used in the film create a sense of scale and wonder as Arthur and his allies travel across vast underwater landscapes, searching for answers about the Lost Kingdom and the dangerous power hidden within its ruins. As the story unfolds, Arthur must face one of the greatest challenges of his life, because defeating Black Manta will require him to confront not only the dark forces threatening Atlantis but also the complicated relationship with his brother Orm, who once stood against him as an enemy but may now become the ally he needs to protect the future of both worlds. Arthur Curry has now settled into his role as the king of Atlantis, but life as a ruler proves far more complicated than he ever imagined, because ruling an entire underwater civilization requires constant attention, diplomacy, and responsibility that often clashes with his more adventurous personality. While he once enjoyed the freedom of traveling the oceans and protecting the world as a hero, he now finds himself spending long hours in council meetings discussing the politics of different underwater kingdoms and trying to keep peace between rival factions that do not always trust a king who was born half human. The responsibilities of leadership become even more challenging because Arthur also has a family on the surface world, including his father Tom Curry and his young son, who represents the future connection between humans and Atlanteans. Arthur struggles to balance these two sides of his life, often feeling caught between his duties as a king beneath the sea and his desire to live a simpler life above the ocean with the people he loves. Meanwhile, the peace of Atlantis is quietly threatened by events happening far away from the kingdom as David Kane, also known as Black Manta, continues his search for ancient power hidden beneath the oceans. After surviving his previous defeat, he has become more obsessed than ever with revenge against Aquaman, believing that Arthur destroyed everything he once cared about and that only complete destruction of Atlantis will satisfy his desire for vengeance. During his exploration of an icy remote region of the ocean, Black Manta and his crew discover the ruins of a mysterious ancient structure buried beneath the frozen waters, where they uncover the legendary Black Trident, an artifact connected to a lost civilization that existed long before modern Atlantis was founded. The moment Black Manta touches the trident, he begins hearing the voice of an ancient king named Kordax, who once ruled the forgotten kingdom of Necris and whose dark experiments with forbidden energy led to the destruction of his civilization thousands of years earlier. The spirit of Kordax slowly begins influencing Black Manta, promising him unimaginable power and the ability to defeat Aquaman if he helps release the ancient forces that remain trapped beneath the ruins of the Lost Kingdom. Corrupted by the dark energy of the Black Trident, Black Manta begins gathering resources and building advanced weapons powered by mysterious energy sources connected to the ancient civilization of Necris. His growing strength becomes a threat not only to Atlantis but also to the balance of the entire planet, because the dark power he now carries has the potential to unleash destructive forces that were buried long ago for a reason. Back in Atlantis, Arthur begins noticing strange changes in the oceans, including unusual storms rising from deep waters and disturbances in ancient regions of the sea that have remained quiet for centuries, which suggests that something powerful has been awakened far beyond the borders of the kingdom. At the same time, Arthur receives troubling reports from Atlantean scouts who have discovered advanced technology being used by Black Manta in remote parts of the ocean, indicating that his old enemy has returned with resources far greater than before. Realizing that the threat may be connected to ancient Atlantean history, Arthur turns to the only person who might understand the secrets behind these mysterious forces, his half-brother Orm, who once ruled Atlantis as Ocean Master before being defeated and imprisoned after attempting to conquer the surface world. Although Arthur and Orm have been enemies in the past, Arthur begins considering the possibility that the former king's knowledge about ancient underwater civilizations may be the key to stopping Black Manta before the power of the Black Trident grows strong enough to unleash the same catastrophic destruction that once erased the lost kingdom of Necris from history. As the strange disturbances in the oceans continue increasing, Arthur begins to realize that the threat facing Atlantis is far greater than a simple attack from an old enemy, because the energy signatures being detected across different parts of the sea suggest that something ancient and dangerous has been awakened from the depths. The Council of Atlantis grows concerned as reports arrive from scouts describing unusual storms, violent shifts in ocean currents, and mysterious activity near regions that have remained untouched for thousands of years. Arthur understands that these events are not natural and that they may be connected to the return of Black Manta, whose technology now appears far more advanced than anything he possessed before. At the same time, Arthur struggles with the growing pressure of being king, because the other leaders of the underwater kingdoms question whether he is capable of handling a threat that could endanger all of them, and some even begin suggesting that Atlantis should focus only on protecting its own borders rather than getting involved in conflicts beyond its territory. This political tension adds another layer of difficulty for Arthur, because he must not only stop Black Manta but also prove that he can lead the entire ocean as a unified force. Meanwhile, far from Atlantis, Black Manta continues to grow stronger under the influence of the Black Trident as the spirit of the ancient King Kordax slowly begins controlling his actions, guiding him toward hidden locations where the lost knowledge of the kingdom of Necris still remains buried beneath the ocean floor. Kordax reveals fragments of the past, explaining how his kingdom once discovered a powerful energy source that could manipulate the environment and control the oceans, but the power eventually became unstable, leading to the destruction of Necris and the imprisonment of Kordax's spirit within the Trident. However, instead of learning from this history, Black Manta embraces the dark power, believing that it will allow him to finally destroy Aquaman and take revenge for everything he lost. He begins constructing new weapons powered by the ancient energy, which start affecting the climate of the planet, causing extreme weather patterns that threaten both the oceans and the surface world. Back in Atlantis, Arthur finally makes the difficult decision to visit Orm in his prison, because he realizes that the former king may be the only one who understands the ancient history connected to these events. Their meeting is tense because Orm still carries the pride of a ruler who once believed he was destined to unite the oceans through conquest, while Arthur now stands as the king who defeated him and changed the future of Atlantis. Despite their past conflicts, Arthur explains the situation and reveals the existence of the Black Trident and the lost kingdom of Necris, which immediately captures Orm's attention because he recognizes the name as part of ancient Atlantean legends describing a civilization that was erased from history due to its dangerous experiments with forbidden energy. Orm warns Arthur that the power connected to Necris is not something that can be controlled, and that if Black Manta is truly using the Black Trident, then the threat they face could destroy not only Atlantis but the entire planet. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Arthur begins considering the possibility of freeing Orm and forming an uneasy alliance with him, because stopping Black Manta may require knowledge, strength and strategy that only the former king can provide. This decision marks the beginning of a new chapter in Arthur's journey, where he must learn to trust someone who was once his greatest enemy in order to protect the future of both the ocean and the surface world from a power that was never meant to be awakened again. As Arthur makes the difficult decision to free Orm from his imprisonment, the tension within Atlantis grows even stronger because many members of the council and the royal guard question whether releasing a former king who once tried to conquer the surface world is a wise choice. However, Arthur understands that the threat they are facing is unlike anything the ocean has experienced before, and that the knowledge Orm possesses about ancient Atlantean history may be the only way to stop Black Manta before the power of the Black Trident grows beyond control. The meeting between the two brothers becomes a defining moment because both of them must confront their past and decide whether they can trust each other in order to face the danger ahead. Orm initially refuses to cooperate because he still believes that Arthur does not fully understand what it means to rule Atlantis and protect its future, but when Arthur explains the scale of the threat and the connection to the lost kingdom of Necris, Orm begins to realize that this situation goes beyond their personal rivalry and that the survival of the entire ocean may depend on their ability to work together. Eventually Orm agrees to help, but only under the condition that Arthur listens to his knowledge and experience regarding the ancient history of Atlantis and the dangerous power hidden within the ruins of Necris. This uneasy alliance marks the beginning of a journey where the two brothers must learn to overcome their differences and combine their strengths in order to stop a common enemy. Meanwhile, Black Manta continues his mission, guided by the voice of Kordax, who reveals more about the ancient civilization that once existed beneath the oceans, explaining that the kingdom of Necris was built on a powerful energy source capable of altering the environment and controlling the balance of nature, but the rulers of that kingdom became consumed by their own ambition, leading to experiments that eventually caused catastrophic destruction. Kordax promises Black Manta that by fully unlocking the power of the Black Trident he can complete what the Lost Kingdom started and reshape the world in his own image. Driven by revenge and the desire for power, Black Manta continues gathering resources and expanding his operations, while his use of ancient energy begins causing more disturbances across the oceans, including rising temperatures, melting ice caps, and violent storms that threaten coastal regions around the world. Back in Atlantis, Arthur and Orm begin preparing for their journey to uncover the truth behind the Lost Kingdom and find a way to stop Black Manta before his actions trigger a disaster that could affect both the ocean and the surface world. The two brothers set out together, traveling beyond the borders of Atlantis into regions of the ocean that have remained unexplored for centuries, where ancient ruins and forgotten civilizations lie hidden beneath the depths. As they move further into these mysterious territories, Arthur begins to see a different side of Orm, who despite his past actions still carries a deep understanding of the ocean and its history, while Orm begins to recognize that Arthur's strength lies not only in his power but also in his willingness to protect both humans and Atlanteans. This journey becomes more than just a mission to stop Black Manta, because it forces both brothers to confront their differences and begin building a fragile trust that may ultimately determine whether they can succeed in saving the world from the dangerous legacy of a civilization that should have remained lost forever. As Arthur and Orm begin their journey across the unknown regions of the ocean, the relationship between the two brothers remains tense because although they have agreed to work together, their past conflicts still influence how they see each other and how they approach the mission ahead. Arthur continues trying to lead as the king of Atlantis while Orm often challenges his decisions, pointing out that ruling the ocean requires more than strength and compassion because it also demands strategic thinking and a deep understanding of the ancient traditions that shaped Atlantean society. This contrast between their personalities becomes one of the key elements of their journey because Arthur represents a modern leader who wants to unite both the surface world and the ocean, while Orm represents the traditional view of Atlantis as a powerful and isolated kingdom that must protect itself above all else. As they travel deeper into the ocean, they encounter regions filled with ancient ruins and forgotten structures that reveal fragments of Atlantean history, including temples, statues, and remnants of civilizations that once thrived before being lost to time. These discoveries help Orm explain the story of the lost kingdom of Necris in greater detail, describing how it was once considered one of the most advanced civilizations beneath the sea because its people discovered a powerful energy source capable of altering the environment and controlling natural forces. However, this power eventually led to their downfall because they began experimenting with forces they could not fully understand, which caused catastrophic events that destroyed their kingdom and forced the surviving Atlantean rulers to erase its history in order to prevent others from repeating the same mistakes. Arthur begins to understand that the power Black Manta is now using is directly connected to this ancient disaster, and that if it is not stopped, it could lead to a similar destruction on a global scale. Meanwhile, Black Manta continues growing stronger as the influence of Kordax becomes more dominant, guiding him toward hidden locations where fragments of the Lost Kingdom still exist, including ancient laboratories and energy sources buried beneath the ocean floor. Each discovery increases his power while also accelerating the environmental damage being caused by the unstable energy, which begins affecting not only the oceans but also the surface world, where rising sea levels and extreme weather events start causing widespread destruction. Back in the journey, Arthur and Orm begin facing dangerous challenges, including encounters with massive sea creatures, hostile environments, and regions filled with unstable energy that reacts unpredictably to their presence. These moments force the two brothers to rely on each other in ways they never expected because survival in these areas requires both Arthur's strength and Orm's knowledge of the ocean. Gradually, their relationship begins to shift as they start recognizing each other's abilities and understanding that neither of them can complete this mission alone. As they continue their search for the lost kingdom of Necris, they begin uncovering clues that lead them toward a hidden location believed to be the center of the ancient civilization where the source of the dark energy may still exist. This discovery brings them closer to confronting Black Manta, but also reveals that the power they are dealing with is far greater than they originally believed, making the mission even more dangerous as they move toward the final stages of their journey. As Arthur and Orm continue their journey into the deepest and most dangerous parts of the ocean, the scale of the ancient world hidden beneath the waves becomes more apparent because the ruins they encounter are far older and more advanced than anything seen in modern Atlantis. Massive structures carved into the ocean floor stand as silent reminders of civilizations that once thrived with incredible power before disappearing from history, and the deeper they travel, the more unstable the environment becomes as strange energy fields disrupt the natural flow of the ocean, creating unpredictable currents, glowing fractures in the seabed, and regions where the water itself seems to react to the ancient power still buried beneath the surface. Orm explains that these disturbances are likely connected to the same energy source that destroyed the kingdom of Necris thousands of years ago, and that if Black Manta continues to access this power, the consequences could extend far beyond the oceans, affecting the entire planet, including the surface world where storms and environmental disasters are already beginning to increase. As they move forward, the brothers encounter a series of dangerous obstacles, including ancient traps left behind by the lost civilization designed to protect its secrets from intruders, which forces them to rely on both their strength and intelligence to survive. Arthur begins to understand that Orm's knowledge of ancient Atlantean history is essential for navigating these ruins, while Orm starts recognizing that Arthur's ability to adapt and think differently is what allows them to overcome challenges that cannot be solved through tradition alone. This gradual shift in their relationship begins building a fragile trust between them as they work together to move closer to the hidden location of Necris, where the source of the dark energy is believed to be located. Meanwhile, Black Manta continues his mission guided by the voice of Kordax, who grows stronger with every use of the Black Trident and begins revealing more of his true intentions, explaining that the ancient kingdom of Necris was not destroyed by accident but by the failure of its rulers to fully control the power they discovered, and that this time he intends to complete what was started by using Black Manta as a vessel to unleash that power across the world. Driven by both revenge and the growing influence of Kordax, Black Manta becomes more aggressive, launching attacks on Atlantean outposts and disrupting key areas of the ocean in order to weaken Atlantis before his final plan is complete. Back in their journey, Arthur and Orm finally reach a massive hidden structure buried deep beneath the ocean, which appears to be the entrance to the lost kingdom of Necris, a place that was believed to have been erased from existence but now stands partially preserved within a region of unstable energy. The site of the ancient city reveals just how advanced the civilization once was, with towering structures glowing with remnants of energy and pathways leading into the depths of the ruins where the secrets of the past still remain hidden. Arthur realizes that this is the place where the final confrontation with Black Manta will likely occur, and that whatever power lies within these ruins must be stopped before it can be fully unleashed. As the two brothers prepare to enter the Lost Kingdom, they understand that the next stage of their journey will test not only their strength but also their ability to work together, because the fate of both the ocean and the surface world now depends on whether they can prevent the ancient power of Necris from rising again. As Arthur and Orm stand before the entrance of the lost kingdom of Necris, the true scale of the ancient civilization becomes clear, because the ruins stretch far beyond what they initially expected, with massive structures rising from the ocean floor and faint glowing energy still pulsing through parts of the city despite being abandoned for thousands of years. The environment around the ruins feels unstable as the water itself reacts to the ancient power, creating strange currents and glowing patterns that move unpredictably through the area. Orm explains that this is a sign that the energy source once used by the rulers of Necris is still active at some level, which makes the situation even more dangerous because it means Black Manta may already be inside the city accessing its power. The two brothers carefully enter the ruins, moving through broken pathways and collapsed structures that reveal fragments of the civilization's history, including symbols carved into the walls depicting the rise and fall of a powerful kingdom that once believed it could control the forces of nature. As they explore deeper into the city, they begin encountering ancient mechanisms and devices that still respond to the energy surrounding them, suggesting that the technology of Necris was far more advanced than anything currently known in Atlantis. Arthur starts to understand that this civilization did not simply disappear but was destroyed by the very power it tried to control, and that the same fate could now threaten the entire planet if Black Manta succeeds in unlocking the full potential of the Black Trident. Meanwhile, far within the ruins, Black Manta continues following the guidance of Kordax, who leads him toward the central chamber of the Lost Kingdom, where the core of the ancient energy source is located. Kordax reveals that this chamber once allowed the rulers of Necris to manipulate the environment and control the oceans, but their inability to control the power led to catastrophic events that caused their civilization to collapse and forced the surviving Atlanteans to seal the kingdom away from the rest of the world. However, Kordax now believes that with the Black Trident he can finally control the energy and use it to reshape the world according to his vision. As Arthur and Orm move closer to the center of the city, they begin encountering more signs of Black Manta's presence, including destroyed structures, activated machines, and traces of the dark energy spreading through the ruins. The brothers realize that they are running out of time, because the longer Black Manta remains in the city, the more power he gains and the more unstable the environment becomes. During their exploration they are forced to face dangerous challenges including collapsing structures, bursts of unstable energy and encounters with ancient defenses that still attempt to protect the secrets of the Lost Kingdom. These moments push Arthur and Orm to work together more closely than ever before, combining their strengths to survive the dangers of Necris while also moving closer to their goal of stopping Black Manta before the power of the ancient civilization is fully awakened. As they approach the central chamber, the energy surrounding them grows stronger and more chaotic, signaling that the final confrontation is near and that whatever happens inside the heart of Necris will determine whether the world is saved or consumed by the same destructive force that once destroyed the Lost Kingdom thousands of years ago. As Arthur and Orm move deeper into the heart of the Lost Kingdom of Necris, the environment around them becomes increasingly unstable and dangerous because the ancient energy that once powered the civilization is now reacting more violently to the presence of the Black Trident and the actions of Black Manta, who is already ahead of them inside the ruins. The structures around them begin glowing with pulses of energy that travel through the broken pathways and walls like veins, carrying power throughout the city, while the water itself starts to shift unpredictably, creating strong currents that push against them as if the entire kingdom is awakening after centuries of silence. Orm explains that this is a clear sign that the core of the energy source is being activated and that if Black Manta reaches the central chamber before they can stop him, the power could spiral out of control, leading to a disaster far greater than the fall of Necris itself. As they continue their journey, they encounter ancient security mechanisms left behind by the rulers of the Lost Kingdom, including automated defenses and energy barriers designed to protect the core of the city from intruders. These defenses force Arthur and Orm to work together in ways that test both their physical abilities and their understanding of the ancient technology, because overcoming these obstacles requires not only strength but also knowledge of how the systems were originally designed to function. During this process, the relationship between the two brothers continues to evolve as they begin trusting each other more openly, with Orm providing guidance based on his knowledge of ancient Atlantean history, while Arthur uses his instincts and adaptability to find solutions that traditional methods cannot solve. Meanwhile, within the central regions of Necris, Black Manta finally reaches the chamber where the core of the ancient energy source is located, a massive structure surrounded by glowing currents of power that respond directly to the Black Trident. The voice of Kordax grows stronger as he begins instructing Black Manta on how to unlock the full potential of the energy, explaining that once the power is released, it will allow them to reshape the oceans and the surface world according to their will. However, the activation of the core begins causing massive disturbances across the planet as ocean temperatures rise rapidly, glaciers begin melting at an accelerated rate, and powerful storms start forming in different parts of the world, indicating that the balance of nature is being disrupted by the unstable energy. Back inside the ruins, Arthur and Orm feel the effects of this activation as the city around them begins shaking and parts of the structure start collapsing, forcing them to move faster toward the central chamber before it is too late. The journey becomes even more dangerous as bursts of energy erupt from the walls and pathways, creating hazards that could easily destroy anyone caught in their path, while the water pressure and currents grow stronger, making it difficult to maintain control of their movement. Despite these challenges, the two brothers continue pushing forward because they understand that the fate of both Atlantis and the surface world now depends on stopping Black Manta before the ancient power of Necris is fully unleashed. As they finally reach the entrance to the central chamber, they can see the intense glow of the energy source illuminating the ruins, and they realize that the final confrontation is about to begin in a place where the past and present collide and where the future of the entire planet will soon be decided. As Arthur and Orm finally reach the entrance of the central chamber within the Lost Kingdom of Necris, the intensity of the ancient energy becomes overwhelming because the entire structure is now glowing with powerful currents that pulse through the ruins like a living force. The water around them vibrates with unstable energy, and the ground beneath their feet begins to crack and shift as if the entire city is reacting to the activation of the core. Inside the chamber, Black Manta stands at the center holding the black trident as the dark energy surrounding him grows stronger with every passing moment, and the voice of Kordax echoes throughout the chamber, guiding him to unlock the full potential of the ancient power. The massive structure around him is unlike anything Arthur has ever seen, with towering pillars of energy rising from the depths and connecting to a central core that radiates a blinding light representing the heart of the Lost Kingdom's power. Arthur immediately realizes that if this energy is fully released, it could trigger a chain reaction that would not only destroy Atlantis but also cause catastrophic damage to the entire planet, including the surface world, where rising sea levels and extreme weather have already begun to show the early effects of the disturbance. Orm quickly explains that the core must be shut down before it reaches full activation, but doing so will require confronting Black Manta directly because the Black Trident is now acting as a key that controls the flow of energy within the chamber. As the two brothers step into the chamber, Black Manta turns to face them with a new level of confidence and power because the influence of Kordax has transformed him into something far more dangerous than before. His armor now pulses with dark energy, and his movements carry a sense of strength that goes beyond his previous abilities, making it clear that he is no longer just seeking revenge but is now fully driven by the ancient force guiding him. The confrontation begins with Black Manta declaring that this is the moment where he will finally destroy Aquaman and everything he represents, while also unleashing a power that will reshape the world. Arthur tries to reason with him, explaining that the energy he is using is unstable and will destroy everything including himself, but Black Manta refuses to listen because the influence of Kordax has already taken control of his mind, pushing him toward completing the activation of the core. The chamber begins shaking violently as energy surges through the structure and the walls start collapsing under the pressure of the unstable power, forcing Arthur and Orm to act quickly because they know that time is running out. The battle between them begins as Arthur and Orm combine their strength to fight against Black Manta, who now uses the power of the Black Trident to create devastating energy attacks that tear through the chamber and send shockwaves across the ruins of Necris. The intensity of the fight grows with each moment as the fate of the world hangs in the balance, and the ancient kingdom that once fell due to its own ambition now stands on the edge of repeating the same destruction once again, unless the power at the center of the chamber can be stopped before it is too late. As the battle inside the central chamber of Necris intensifies, the unstable energy surrounding the core begins reacting violently to every movement and every strike exchanged between Arthur, Orm and Black Manta, turning the entire structure into a collapsing battlefield where every second brings them closer to total destruction. The glowing pillars of energy surge uncontrollably, sending waves of power crashing through the chamber, while pieces of ancient architecture break apart and fall into the depths below. Arthur and Orm fight together with a level of coordination that reflects the fragile trust they have built during their journey, as Arthur uses his strength and control over the ocean to counter the overwhelming force of the energy, while Orm relies on his skill and knowledge of Atlantean combat to match the aggressive attacks of Black Manta, who now moves with terrifying speed and power under the influence of the Black Trident. The voice of Kordax continues echoing through the chamber, urging Black Manta to complete the activation of the core and promising him ultimate control over the oceans and the surface world once the ancient power is fully unleashed. However, the more the energy grows, the more unstable it becomes, causing violent tremors that spread not only through the ruins of Necris but also across the surrounding oceans, where massive waves begin forming and the balance of the planet starts shifting in dangerous ways. Arthur realizes that this is no longer just a fight against Black Manta but a race against time to shut down the core before the energy reaches a point where it cannot be contained. During the battle, Arthur attempts to reach Black Manta, emotionally reminding him of who he was before the influence of Kordax took over, explaining that revenge will not bring back what he lost and that the power he is using will destroy everything including himself, but the dark energy has already taken hold of Black Manta's mind, making him more aggressive and determined to finish what he started. Orm recognizes that the only way to stop the activation is to separate Black Manta from the Black Trident, because as long as he holds it, the connection to the core will remain active, allowing the energy to continue building. This realization leads to a more focused effort by the two brothers as they begin working together to create an opportunity to disarm Black Manta. Despite the overwhelming power he now possesses, the chamber continues collapsing around them as streams of energy erupt from the core, creating explosive bursts that threaten to consume everything in their path, while the water pressure and heat levels rise to dangerous levels, indicating that the system is approaching a critical failure point. Arthur and Orm push themselves to their limits, fighting against both Black Manta and the environment itself, knowing that if they fail to stop the activation within the next few moments, the destruction that follows will not only erase the lost kingdom of Necris once again, but will also spread across the oceans and the surface world, leading to a disaster far greater than anything seen before in the history of either civilization. As the battle inside the collapsing chamber of Necris continues to escalate, the pressure from the unstable energy reaches a critical level, causing the entire structure to shake violently, while massive cracks begin spreading across the walls and floor. The glowing core at the center pulses faster and brighter with each passing moment, releasing waves of power that push Arthur and Orm back as they struggle to maintain control against the overwhelming force unleashed by Black Manta, who now appears almost unstoppable under the influence of the Black Trident. The voice of Kordax grows louder and more commanding, echoing through the chamber as he urges Black Manta to fully surrender himself to the power, promising that together they will reshape the world and bring a new era where the oceans and the surface are ruled by their strength. Arthur realizes that Black Manta is no longer fully in control of his actions because the ancient spirit has taken over his mind, turning him into a vessel for the destructive energy that once destroyed the kingdom of Necris. Despite this, Arthur refuses to give up on him completely and continues trying to reach him through words, reminding him of his past and the reasons behind his anger, in the hope that some part of him can still resist the control of Kordax. However, each attempt is met with even more aggressive attacks as Black Manta unleashes powerful energy blasts from the trident, sending shockwaves through the chamber and causing parts of the structure to collapse around them. Orm quickly analyzes the situation and realizes that the core is reaching a point where it will either stabilize under full control or explode in a catastrophic release of energy that could destroy everything within range, including Atlantis and possibly the surface world as well. He tells Arthur that they have only one chance to stop this, and that it involves separating Black Manta from the Trident while also disrupting the energy flow between the core and the ancient system powering the city. Understanding the risk, Arthur agrees, and the two brothers begin coordinating their attacks more carefully, using their combined strength to create openings while avoiding the destructive bursts of energy that continue erupting around them. The environment itself becomes a major threat as streams of energy shoot across the chamber, forcing them to constantly move, while falling debris and rising heat levels make it harder to stay focused on the fight. At the same time, far beyond the ruins of Necris, the effects of the unstable energy continue spreading across the planet, with massive storms forming over the ocean's coastal regions, facing rising tides and unpredictable weather patterns, indicating that the balance of nature is already being disrupted by the activation of the ancient power. Back inside the chamber, Arthur and Orm push forward with everything they have, determined to end the battle before it is too late, because they understand that this moment is not only about defeating Black Manta but about preventing a disaster that could reshape the world forever if the power of the Lost Kingdom is allowed to fully awaken once again. As the unstable energy inside the core chamber reaches a near breaking point, the entire Lost Kingdom of Necris begins collapsing around Arthur, Orm and Black Manta, because the ancient systems that once controlled the power are no longer able to contain the overwhelming force being released. The glowing pillars of energy start flickering violently while massive cracks spread across the central structure, causing sections of the chamber to fall apart and disappear into the depths below. Arthur and Orm realize that they are running out of time because if the core fully destabilizes it will trigger a catastrophic explosion capable of destroying not only Necris but also sending shockwaves across the oceans and the surface world leading to unimaginable destruction. Black Manta continues attacking with relentless force driven by the voice of Kordax, who is now almost completely in control, urging him to complete the activation and unleash the full power of the ancient energy. Arthur understands that reasoning with him is no longer enough and that the only way to stop this is to physically separate him from the Black Trident, which is acting as the connection between Kordax and the core. Working together, Arthur and Orm begin executing a coordinated plan where Orm uses his agility and combat skill to distract Black Manta while Arthur channels his strength and control over the ocean to create powerful waves that disrupt the flow of energy within the chamber. The fight becomes even more dangerous as bursts of unstable energy explode around them, forcing them to constantly adjust their movements while avoiding being struck by the destructive forces being released by the core. At one point Arthur manages to weaken Black Manta's defenses, creating a brief opportunity for Orm to strike directly at the trident, but the dark energy surrounding it reacts violently, protecting its connection to the core and sending Orm crashing back across the chamber. Despite the setback, the brothers refuse to give up because they know that this is their only chance to stop the disaster before it becomes unstoppable. Meanwhile, the effects of the unstable energy continue spreading across the planet as massive tidal waves begin forming and powerful storms strike coastal regions, causing chaos on the surface world, while Atlantis itself begins feeling the impact of the disturbance, with rising pressure levels and structural damage appearing in parts of the kingdom. Back inside the chamber, the situation grows even more desperate as the core begins emitting a continuous stream of energy, indicating that it is seconds away from reaching full activation or complete collapse. Arthur pushes himself beyond his limits, drawing on all his strength to hold back the energy long enough to give Orm another chance to disarm Black Manta, while Orm prepares for one final attempt, knowing that failure will mean the end of everything. As the chamber continues collapsing and the energy reaches its peak, the final moments of the battle approach, where one decisive action will determine whether the ancient power of Necris is finally stopped or unleashed upon the world once again. As the final moments inside the collapsing chamber of Necris approach, Arthur and Orm realize that everything now depends on a single decisive action, because the core has reached its peak instability and the ancient energy is seconds away from either being shut down or exploding with catastrophic force. The entire structure shakes violently as massive pieces of the chamber fall away into the depths, while the glowing pillars of energy surge uncontrollably, sending waves of power crashing through the area. Black Manta stands at the center, still holding the Black Trident, as the voice of Kordax becomes louder and more dominant, pushing him to complete the activation and unleash the full power of the ancient kingdom. Arthur understands that there is no more time for hesitation and that the only way to stop this is to break the connection between Black Manta, the Trident, and the core, even if it means risking everything in the process. With this realization, he signals Orm to prepare for their final coordinated move as the two brothers push themselves to their limits, combining their strength and strategy in one last effort to end the battle. Orm once again engages Black Manta directly, using all his combat skill to keep him distracted, while Arthur channels the full power of the ocean, summoning massive currents that disrupt the flow of energy within the chamber and create an opening for their plan to succeed. The environment around them becomes even more dangerous as bursts of energy explode across the structure and the water pressure rises to extreme levels, making it difficult to maintain control. But despite these challenges, Arthur refuses to give up because he knows that failure will mean the destruction of everything he has fought to protect. At the critical moment, Arthur launches himself toward Black Manta, using the force of the currents to break through the barrier of dark energy surrounding the trident, while Orm follows immediately behind, delivering a powerful strike aimed directly at the weapon itself. The impact sends shockwaves through the chamber as the connection between the trident and the core begins to weaken, causing the energy flow to fluctuate unpredictably. However, the influence of Kordax resists this disruption, pushing Black Manta to fight back with even greater intensity as the dark energy surges around him, attempting to maintain control of the core. Arthur continues pushing forward, refusing to retreat even as the energy burns around him, and with one final effort he manages to grab hold of the trident while Orm supports him by holding back Black Manta long enough for Arthur to begin breaking its connection to the core. The moment becomes a struggle between the will of the two brothers and the ancient power of Kordax as the chamber reaches the point of total collapse and the energy threatens to consume everything within its reach. Far beyond the ruins, the oceans continue reacting violently to the instability, with massive waves and storms spreading across the planet, indicating that the outcome of this moment will determine whether the destruction continues or finally comes to an end. As Arthur and Orm hold their ground against the overwhelming force, they understand that the next few seconds will decide not only the fate of Necris but the future of both Atlantis and the entire world. As Arthur grips the black trident and struggles to break its connection with the core, the energy inside the chamber reaches its most unstable state, causing the entire structure of Necris to collapse piece by piece while violent waves of power erupt in every direction. The glowing pillars begin shattering as the ancient system loses control and the connection between the trident and the core flickers unpredictably, creating bursts of energy that threaten to consume everything around them. Orm continues holding back Black Manta, who is now completely overwhelmed by the influence of Kordax as the dark energy surrounding him grows stronger and more chaotic, attempting to force the connection to stabilize and complete the activation. Arthur realizes that simply pulling the trident away will not be enough because the ancient power has already spread throughout the core and must be disrupted at its source if they are to prevent a catastrophic explosion. Drawing on every ounce of his strength, Arthur begins channeling the energy of the ocean through himself, using his connection to the sea to counter the destructive force of the core while simultaneously trying to weaken the trident's hold over the system. The clash between natural power and ancient energy creates a massive reaction inside the chamber, causing the water to surge violently and the surrounding structures to collapse even faster as the system struggles to maintain stability. Meanwhile, Orm faces an increasingly difficult battle as Black Manta becomes more aggressive and unpredictable, launching powerful attacks that force Orm to defend himself while still trying to keep him away from Arthur long enough to complete the plan. Despite the danger, Orm refuses to back down because he understands that this is the moment that will define not only their mission but also his own path as he begins to move beyond the role of a fallen king and becomes a protector of the ocean alongside his brother. Back at the core, Arthur finally manages to disrupt the flow of energy, causing a chain reaction that begins destabilizing the connection between the trident and the ancient system as cracks of light spread across the weapon and the dark energy surrounding it starts to weaken. However, this action also pushes the core closer to collapse as the uncontrolled energy begins building toward a massive release that could destroy everything if not contained. Arthur quickly realizes that stopping the activation alone is not enough and that they must now find a way to safely release or neutralize the energy before it explodes. At the same time, far across the planet, the effects of the disturbance reach their peak, with massive storms raging across the oceans and coastal regions facing extreme conditions as the balance of nature hangs on the edge of collapse. Inside the chamber, the final phase of the battle begins as Arthur and Orm work together to not only defeat Black Manta and break the connection to the trident but also find a way to stabilize the ancient energy before it destroys both the Lost Kingdom and the world beyond. The intensity of the moment grows as the chamber continues collapsing around them, and the fate of the planet now depends on whether they can control the power that once destroyed an entire civilization. As the ancient core of Necris reaches the brink of total collapse, Arthur and Orm realize that the situation has become even more dangerous because although they have weakened the connection between the Black Trident and the energy source, the power inside the chamber is now completely unstable and building toward a massive release that could destroy everything if it is not contained in time. The glowing structure begins breaking apart as waves of energy surge uncontrollably through the ruins, sending shockwaves across the collapsing city, while the water itself becomes chaotic, reacting to the immense pressure and heat generated by the core. Arthur struggles to maintain control, using his connection to the ocean to hold back the energy long enough to prevent an immediate explosion, but he quickly understands that his strength alone will not be enough to contain something this powerful. Orm continues to fight against Black Manta, who is now losing the direct influence of Kordax as the connection to the trident weakens, yet still remains dangerous and unpredictable because the dark energy continues to flow through him, causing violent bursts of strength that make the battle even more intense. During the struggle, Orm manages to push Black Manta away from the core, creating a brief moment where Arthur can focus entirely on stabilizing the energy, but the effort begins draining him as the power of the ocean clashes with the ancient force, causing immense strain on his body. Realizing that they need another solution, Orm recalls fragments of Atlantean history that describe how the rulers of Necris once attempted to control the energy using a system of containment channels built into the structure of the city. Although those systems ultimately failed, Orm believes that parts of the mechanism may still function and could be used to redirect the energy away from the core long enough to prevent a catastrophic explosion. Acting quickly, he begins searching the collapsing chamber for any remaining control points while Arthur continues holding back the unstable power. Meanwhile, the destruction of the chamber accelerates as massive sections of the structure fall away and the surrounding water begins collapsing inward, threatening to crush everything within the ruins. Far beyond Necris, the effects of the unstable energy continue spreading across the planet, with massive tidal waves forming across the oceans, violent storms striking coastal regions, and global environmental systems being pushed to their limits, indicating that the entire world is on the edge of disaster. Back inside the chamber, Orm finally locates a partially functioning control mechanism connected to the ancient system and realizes that activating it could redirect the energy away from the core, but doing so will require precise timing and coordination with Arthur's efforts to contain the power. As the two brothers prepare for this final attempt, they understand that failure will result in the complete destruction of Necris and potentially the entire planet, but success could stop the ancient energy once and for all and prevent the same fate that destroyed the Lost Kingdom thousands of years ago. With the chamber collapsing around them and the energy reaching its peak, Arthur and Orm prepare to execute their plan, knowing that the next few moments will decide whether they can save the world or become part of its destruction. As Arthur continues holding back the unstable energy of the collapsing core inside Necris, the pressure on his body increases to an almost unbearable level because the ancient force is now pushing against him with the full intensity of its power, threatening to break free at any moment while the entire chamber begins falling apart around them. The glowing structure of the core flickers violently, sending bursts of energy in every direction and causing massive pieces of the ruins to collapse into the depths below, while the surrounding water churns with extreme force as if the ocean itself is reacting to the imbalance created by the ancient technology. Orm quickly moves toward the partially functioning control mechanism he discovered and begins attempting to activate it using his knowledge of Atlantean systems, but the damaged state of the ancient structure makes it difficult to understand how much of the mechanism is still operational and whether it will be able to handle the immense power being generated by the core. Arthur realizes that he cannot hold the energy back much longer and calls out to Orm, urging him to act quickly because the core is seconds away from releasing a catastrophic surge that could destroy everything. Orm manages to activate part of the system, causing faint channels of energy to begin redirecting away from the core, but the process is unstable and incomplete, requiring Arthur to carefully adjust the flow of power using his connection to the ocean in order to guide the energy into the channels without triggering an explosion. This delicate coordination between the two brothers becomes the only thing standing between the world and total destruction, as Arthur uses every bit of strength he has to maintain control while Orm continues adjusting the mechanism, trying to stabilize the flow of energy long enough for the system to fully engage. Meanwhile, Black Manta slowly begins regaining partial awareness as the influence of Kordax weakens due to the disruption of the Trident's connection to the core, and he finds himself caught between his own desire for revenge and the realization that the power he unleashed is now threatening to destroy everything, including himself. Despite this moment of hesitation, the dark energy still flowing through him causes him to lash out again, attempting to reclaim the trident and restore the connection to the core, which forces Orm to briefly leave the mechanism and defend against the attack while Arthur struggles to keep the energy contained on his own. The situation becomes even more critical as the core begins emitting a continuous surge of power, indicating that the system is nearing total failure and that any further disruption could trigger an uncontrollable explosion. Far beyond the ruins of Necris, the effects of the unstable energy continue spreading across the planet, with massive storms intensifying across the oceans and coastal regions facing extreme flooding, while Atlantis itself begins experiencing structural strain from the pressure changes caused by the disturbance. Back inside the collapsing chamber, Arthur and Orm realize that they have only one final chance to stabilize the energy and prevent the destruction of the world, as they prepare to combine their efforts one last time using both the ancient mechanism and Arthur's connection to the ocean to redirect the power safely before it is too late. As the collapsing chamber of Necris reaches its most critical stage, Arthur and Orm understand that this is their final opportunity to stop the ancient energy from destroying everything, because the core is now emitting continuous waves of power that are growing stronger with each passing second. The entire structure shakes violently as the glowing pillars shatter and the surrounding ruins begin to collapse inward, creating a dangerous vortex of water and debris that threatens to pull everything into the unstable center. Arthur continues holding the energy back with immense effort, using his connection to the ocean to contain the power just long enough for Orm to complete the activation of the ancient mechanism, but the strain on his body becomes visible as the force of the core pushes against him with overwhelming intensity. Orm quickly returns to the control system and begins adjusting the remaining functional components, carefully aligning the energy channels so that they can redirect the unstable power away from the core and into the deeper ocean, where it can dissipate without causing catastrophic destruction. The process is extremely delicate because any imbalance in the flow could trigger an explosion far more destructive than the collapse of Necris itself. At the same time, Black Manta struggles against the weakening influence of Kordax as the dark energy around him becomes unstable due to the disruption of the Trident's connection to the core, and for a brief moment he regains enough control to realize the scale of the destruction unfolding around him. However, the lingering presence of Kordax continues pushing him toward reclaiming the Trident and completing the activation, forcing him into a final desperate attack that threatens to interrupt Arthur and Orm's efforts at the worst possible moment. Orm is forced to defend against this attack while still trying to maintain the operation of the mechanism, creating a dangerous situation where even a single mistake could lead to complete failure. Arthur sees this and pushes himself beyond his limits, using every bit of strength he has left to hold the energy steady despite the intense pressure and the rapidly collapsing environment around him. The water surges violently as streams of energy begin flowing through the newly activated channels, and for the first time the power of the core starts to shift away from total instability as parts of the energy are successfully redirected. Far beyond Necris, the effects of the disturbance begin to slow slightly as the storms and tidal waves show signs of weakening, indicating that their plan may be starting to work. However, the process is far from complete and the core still holds enough energy to cause massive destruction if it is not fully stabilized. Inside the chamber, the final moments of the struggle continue as Arthur and Orm fight not only against the collapsing structure and the unstable energy but also against the last desperate actions of Black Manta, who refuses to let go of his goal even as the world around him falls apart. The fate of Atlantis, the surface world, and the entire planet now hangs on whether the two brothers can maintain control of the energy long enough to fully redirect it and bring an end to the ancient power that once destroyed the lost kingdom of Necris. As the final stage of their plan begins inside the collapsing ruins of Necris, Arthur and Orm push themselves beyond their limits because the ancient energy flowing through the core is now partially redirected but still dangerously unstable and capable of triggering a massive explosion if even a small imbalance occurs. The glowing channels created by the ancient mechanism begin carrying streams of power away from the center of the chamber, sending waves of energy deep into the ocean where it can slowly dissipate, but the process is far from complete as violent surges continue erupting from the core, causing the entire structure to shake and collapse further with each passing second. Arthur remains at the center, holding back the remaining force of the energy using his connection to the ocean, while his body shows clear signs of exhaustion as the immense pressure threatens to overwhelm him at any moment. Orm continues adjusting the control mechanism, carefully stabilizing the flow of energy while also defending against the unpredictable attacks of Black Manta, who is now caught between moments of clarity and bursts of aggression as the influence of Kordax weakens but has not completely disappeared. During a brief moment of control, Black Manta begins to realize the destruction he has caused as he looks around the collapsing chamber and sees the consequences of the power he tried to use for revenge. However, the lingering presence of the ancient spirit continues to push him toward reclaiming the trident and completing the activation. This internal struggle adds another layer of tension to the already critical situation because his actions could either help end the disaster or cause it to spiral out of control once again. Arthur notices this moment and attempts to reach him one last time, calling out to remind him that he still has a choice and that continuing down this path will only lead to total destruction, not only for Atlantis but for himself as well. For a brief second, Black Manta hesitates as the connection to the trident flickers and the dark energy surrounding him weakens slightly, giving Orm an opportunity to regain full control of the mechanism and increase the flow of energy through the channels. The effect begins to stabilize the core further as the violent surges start decreasing in intensity and the chamber shows signs that the worst of the instability may be passing. Far beyond Necris, the oceans begin calming slightly as the massive storms weaken and the tidal waves start losing strength, indicating that the balance of the planet is slowly being restored. However, the danger is not completely gone because a large amount of energy still remains within the core and must be safely released before the system can fully stabilize. Inside the chamber, the final moments of this critical phase unfold as Arthur and Orm continue working together with complete focus, knowing that any mistake at this stage could undo everything they have achieved and bring the world back to the edge of destruction once again. As the redirected energy continues flowing through the ancient channels of Necris, the situation inside the collapsing chamber slowly begins to shift from total chaos toward fragile stability, but the danger is still far from over because a massive amount of power remains trapped within the core and must be released safely before the system can fully stabilize. Arthur continues standing at the center of the chamber, using his connection to the ocean to control the remaining surges of energy while his strength is pushed to its absolute limit as the pressure around him grows more intense with each passing second. The glowing structure of the core flickers as the violent bursts begin to reduce in frequency, yet each surge that remains carries enough force to destroy everything if not properly managed. Orm remains focused on the ancient mechanism, carefully adjusting the flow of energy through the channels to ensure that it is being redirected evenly and does not create new points of instability within the system. The collapsing ruins around them add to the danger as large sections of the chamber continue falling away into the depths while the water currents grow unpredictable due to the shifting balance of energy. Meanwhile, Black Manta's internal struggle becomes more visible as the influence of Kordax weakens further, allowing brief moments where he begins to regain control of his own actions and sees the destruction that has been caused by the power he sought to use for revenge. During one of these moments he hesitates, completely lowering his weapon as the dark energy surrounding him flickers and fades slightly, showing that the connection between him, the trident, and the ancient spirit is breaking apart. Arthur takes advantage of this moment and speaks to him again, reminding him that it is not too late to stop the destruction and that helping them now could prevent the loss of countless lives both in the ocean and on the surface. This time the words reach him more clearly as the weakening influence of Kordax allows him to fully understand the consequences of his actions, and for the first time since the battle began he chooses not to attack, instead stepping back from the core as if finally breaking free from the control that has driven him. This decision gives Orm the opportunity to fully stabilize the mechanism as the energy channels begin functioning more effectively, pulling the remaining power away from the core and dispersing it into the ocean in a controlled manner. Far beyond Necris, the changes become more noticeable as the massive storms continue weakening and the oceans begin returning to a more natural state, although the effects of the disturbance are still visible across the planet. Inside the chamber, the final phase of stabilization begins as Arthur and Orm prepare to release the last surge of energy, knowing that this final step will determine whether the ancient power of Necris is completely neutralized or whether it will still have the potential to cause destruction in the future. As the final phase of the stabilization begins inside the collapsing chamber of Necris, Arthur and Orm prepare to release the remaining energy from the core in a controlled manner, because although much of the power has already been redirected, a final concentrated surge still remains within the system, and if it is not handled correctly it could trigger one last catastrophic explosion. The glowing structure of the core pulses slowly now, no longer emitting the violent bursts seen earlier but still holding enough energy to pose a serious threat, while the surrounding ruins continue collapsing piece by piece as the ancient city reaches the end of its existence. Arthur stands at the center, focusing all his remaining strength on maintaining control over the energy as it prepares to move through the final channels, while Orm carefully adjusts the mechanism, ensuring that the flow remains stable and balanced during the release. Black Manta, now free from the influence of Kordax, stands at a distance watching the events unfold with a mixture of exhaustion and realization as the weight of his actions begins to settle in and he understands how close he came to destroying everything in his pursuit of revenge. The moment becomes critical as Orm signals to Arthur that the system is ready for the final release and that once the energy begins flowing there will be no way to stop it until the process is complete. Arthur nods, understanding the risk, and begins guiding the energy into the channels, using his connection to the ocean to control its movement, while the core releases the final surge, which travels through the ancient pathways like a massive wave of light spreading out into the depths of the ocean, where it begins to dissipate safely. The chamber shakes one last time as the energy leaves the core, causing the remaining structures to collapse inward and signaling the end of the ancient system that once powered the lost kingdom of Necris. For a brief moment everything becomes silent as the glow fades and the core finally goes dark, indicating that the threat has been neutralized and the unstable energy has been completely dispersed. Far beyond the ruins, the oceans begin calming significantly as the storms weaken further and the tides return to normal levels, while the surface world starts recovering from the extreme conditions caused by the disturbance. Inside the chamber, Arthur collapses to one knee, exhausted from the effort, while Orm steps back from the mechanism, knowing that they have succeeded in preventing the destruction of the world. The lost kingdom of Necris now lies in ruins once again, but this time its power has been fully neutralized, ensuring that it will no longer pose a threat to Atlantis or the planet. As the water settles around them and the collapsing chamber begins to sink deeper into the ocean, Arthur looks toward Orm, realizing that their combined efforts have not only saved the world but also changed their relationship as brothers, proving that even those who once stood as enemies can come together to protect a future greater than themselves. As the ancient core of Necris finally goes dark and the unstable energy is completely dispersed, the immediate danger that once threatened to destroy the world comes to an end, but the aftermath of the battle begins to reveal the true scale of what has just occurred, because the entire lost kingdom continues collapsing into the depths, taking with it the last remnants of the ancient civilization that once tried to control a power far beyond its understanding. Arthur and Orm quickly realize that they must leave the ruins before the remaining structure completely falls apart and traps them beneath the ocean forever, as the surrounding environment becomes unstable, with debris falling from every direction and powerful currents pulling everything toward the collapsing center. Arthur, despite his exhaustion, gathers his strength and signals Orm to move as the two brothers begin navigating their way out of the ruins while avoiding falling structures and unstable energy pockets that still linger within the collapsing city. Black Manta remains behind for a moment, standing among the ruins as he looks at the trident now weakened and no longer glowing with dark energy, realizing that the power he sought has brought him nothing but destruction and loss. For the first time he begins to truly understand the consequences of his actions as the voice of Kordax fades completely, leaving him alone with the reality of what he has done. Eventually he too turns away from the collapsing core and follows the others out of the ruins as the final remnants of Necris begin disappearing into the depths. As Arthur and Orm reach the outer sections of the city, the scale of the collapse becomes even more apparent as massive structures crumble and sink into the ocean floor while the surrounding water begins stabilizing as the ancient energy no longer disrupts the natural balance of the environment. Once they escape the immediate danger, the two brothers pause for a moment, looking back at the ruins of Necris, understanding that they have just witnessed the final end of a civilization that once nearly destroyed the world and could have done so again if not for their actions. Far across the planet, the oceans continue calming as the storms weaken and the extreme conditions begin to fade, allowing both Atlantis and the surface world to slowly recover from the chaos caused by the ancient energy. Back beneath the sea, Arthur reflects on what has happened, realizing that being king is not only about protecting his people from visible threats but also about understanding the hidden dangers of the past that could resurface at any moment and threaten the future of the world. Orm, standing beside him, begins to see his brother differently, recognizing that Arthur's strength lies not just in his power but in his willingness to protect both the ocean and the surface world, even when it requires difficult choices and sacrifices. This moment marks a turning point in their relationship as the rivalry that once defined them begins to fade and is replaced by a sense of mutual respect and understanding forged through the battle they have just survived. As they prepare to return to Atlantis, they know that although the immediate danger has been stopped, the lessons of Necris will remain with them as a reminder of how easily power can be misused and how important it is to protect the balance between strength and wisdom in order to prevent the same mistakes from ever happening again. As Arthur and Orm leave behind the collapsing ruins of Necris and begin their journey back through the deep ocean, the silence that follows the destruction feels almost unreal, because only moments earlier the entire region was filled with violent energy storms, and now the water slowly begins returning to its natural state as the ancient power finally disappears into the depths. The currents calm, the glowing disturbances fade, and the environment stabilizes, creating a stark contrast to the chaos they just escaped. Arthur, still exhausted from holding back the core's energy, swims forward with determination, knowing that although the immediate danger has passed, there is still much to deal with once they return to Atlantis, including the recovery of the ocean and the consequences of what has happened across the planet. Orm follows beside him, no longer as a rival but as an ally who has proven his worth during the battle, and this shift in their relationship becomes clear as they move together with a sense of mutual understanding that did not exist before. The journey back is quieter but filled with reflection as both brothers process the events that took place inside Necris and the lessons they have learned about power, responsibility, and the fragile balance that exists between different worlds. Meanwhile, Black Manta swims at a distance, separated from them both physically and emotionally, as he struggles with the realization that his actions nearly led to the destruction of everything and that the power he sought ultimately controlled him instead of the other way around. The absence of Kordax's voice leaves him alone with his thoughts, forcing him to confront the consequences of his choices for the first time without the influence of the dark energy guiding him. As they move further away from the ruins, the ocean begins showing clear signs of recovery, with marine life slowly returning to the area and the violent currents fading into gentle movement, indicating that the natural balance is being restored. Far above the surface, the effects of the crisis begin to settle as storms weaken, coastal flooding recedes, and global systems start stabilizing, although the damage caused by the disturbance remains visible, reminding the world how close it came to disaster. As Arthur and Orm approach the borders of Atlantis, the kingdom itself comes into view, once again standing strong despite the strain it endured during the crisis, and the sight brings a sense of relief because it represents the home they fought to protect. However, Arthur knows that returning as king now carries even greater responsibility because the events of Necris have shown that threats do not only come from enemies but also from forgotten parts of history that can resurface without warning. Orm too begins to reconsider his own beliefs about Atlantis and its role in the world, realizing that isolation and control are not enough to ensure the safety of their people and that cooperation and understanding may be just as important in protecting the future. As they continue their journey toward the kingdom, the bond between the two brothers becomes stronger, not through words but through the shared experience of facing a challenge that required them to trust each other completely. The ocean around them, now calm and peaceful, serves as a reminder that balance has been restored, but also as a warning that such balance must be protected carefully to prevent the mistakes of the past from repeating themselves again. As Arthur and Orm finally approach Atlantis after their journey through the ruins of Necris, the kingdom appears both familiar and changed because although it still stands strong, the effects of the recent crisis are visible across its structures, with parts of the city showing signs of strain from the pressure changes and disturbances caused by the ancient energy. The guards quickly recognize Arthur and open the gates, allowing them to return as news of their arrival spreads throughout the kingdom, bringing both relief and curiosity among the people who have been waiting to hear whether their king succeeded in stopping the threat that had begun affecting the oceans and the surface world. Arthur enters Atlantis not just as a warrior who has defeated an enemy but as a king who has faced one of the greatest challenges of his life and has learned the true weight of his responsibilities. Orm walks beside him no longer as a prisoner or a rival but as someone who played a crucial role in saving the world, and this change does not go unnoticed by the people of Atlantis, who begin to see him in a different light. As they move through the city, Arthur notices the damage caused by the unstable energy, including cracks in certain structures and areas where the natural balance of the ocean was briefly disrupted, but he also sees the resilience of his people as they work together to repair the damage and restore the kingdom to its full strength. The Council of Atlantis gathers to hear Arthur's report, and the atmosphere in the chamber is serious because the leaders understand that what happened in Necris could have ended in complete disaster if not for the actions of Arthur and Orm. During the meeting, Arthur explains everything, including the return of Black Manta, the influence of Kordax, and the danger posed by the ancient energy of Necris, making it clear that the threat was not just an attack but a consequence of forgotten history that resurfaced after centuries. He emphasizes that Atlantis must remain aware of such dangers in the future and cannot ignore the lessons of the past. Orm adds his own perspective, explaining the history of Necris and how its downfall serves as a warning about the misuse of power, which strengthens the understanding among the council that knowledge and caution are just as important as strength in protecting the kingdom. Meanwhile, news of Black Manta's actions spreads across Atlantis and the surface world, raising questions about what will happen to him now that the immediate threat has ended. Although he is no longer under the influence of Kordax, his role in nearly destroying the world cannot be ignored and his future remains uncertain. As the meeting concludes, Arthur is faced with new challenges as king because the events of Necris have changed the way Atlantis must think about its role in the world and its relationship with both the surface and the hidden parts of history that still hold dangerous secrets. The return to Atlantis marks the beginning of a new phase in Arthur's journey, where he must not only lead his people but also ensure that the balance between power and responsibility is maintained so that the mistakes of the past are never repeated again. Standing in the center of his kingdom, Arthur understands that saving the world was only one part of his duty and that guiding Atlantis into a safer future will require wisdom, patience, and the ability to learn from everything that has happened. As the days pass after the return from Necris, Atlantis slowly begins to recover from the impact of the crisis, while Arthur takes on the responsibility of ensuring that the kingdom not only rebuilds its damaged structures but also learns from what happened so that such a threat never rises again. The city is filled with activity as Atlanteans work together, repairing weakened sections, reinforcing key areas, and restoring the natural balance of the ocean that had been disturbed by the ancient energy. Arthur moves through the kingdom, observing the progress and speaking with his people, understanding that being a king is not just about leading during battles but also about guiding his people through recovery and rebuilding after danger has passed. The council continues holding discussions about how Atlantis should respond to the knowledge revealed by the events of Necris, because it has become clear that there are still ancient secrets hidden within the ocean that could pose threats in the future if they are not properly understood or contained. Arthur begins forming plans to send trusted scouts and scholars to explore these hidden regions carefully, not to exploit them but to ensure that any dangerous remnants of the past are identified and secured before they can be misused again. Orm remains in Atlantis, but his role has changed significantly because he is no longer seen purely as a former enemy but as someone who contributed to saving the world, and his knowledge of ancient history becomes valuable in helping the council understand the deeper aspects of the ocean's past. Although some members of the council still remain cautious about trusting him completely, others begin recognizing that his experience and understanding could play an important role in protecting Atlantis from future threats. The relationship between Arthur and Orm continues to evolve as they spend more time working together, discussing not only the past but also the future of Atlantis and how it should position itself in a world where the surface and the ocean are becoming increasingly connected. Arthur also begins spending time with his family on the surface, reconnecting with his father and enjoying moments of peace with his child, which remind him why he fights to protect both worlds and strengthen his resolve to maintain balance between them. Meanwhile, Black Manta's fate becomes a topic of discussion as reports indicate that he survived the collapse of Necris and disappeared into the depths, leaving behind questions about whether he will return and what path he will choose now that he is free from the influence of Kordax. Arthur understands that while the immediate threat has ended, the consequences of what happened may still affect the future, and that he must remain prepared for any possibility. As Atlantis continues rebuilding, the kingdom becomes stronger not just in its structures but in its understanding of the responsibilities it carries and the dangers that exist beyond its borders. Arthur stands at the center of this transformation, realizing that the events of Necris have changed him as a leader, teaching him that true strength lies not only in power but in the ability to learn, adapt, and protect the balance of the world even when facing challenges that come from the forgotten past. As Atlantis continues to rebuild and strengthen itself after the events of Necris, Arthur begins focusing on shaping the future of the kingdom in a way that ensures long-term stability not only for his people but for the entire ocean and the surface world as well, because he now understands that the responsibilities of being king extend far beyond protecting Atlantis from immediate threats and include preparing for dangers that may arise from forgotten parts of history or from conflicts between different civilizations. The council works closely with Arthur to develop new strategies that involve both defense and exploration, as they establish teams dedicated to studying ancient ruins and monitoring unusual activity in the ocean so that any signs of dangerous energy or hidden technology can be detected early and handled before it becomes a threat. Orm plays an important role in these efforts as his deep knowledge of Atlantean history allows him to guide these teams toward areas that may hold secrets similar to Necris, while also helping them understand which parts of the past should remain undisturbed to avoid repeating the mistakes that led to the destruction of ancient civilizations. Although his presence in Atlantis is still met with mixed reactions from some citizens, his actions during the crisis begin to slowly rebuild trust, and he starts finding a new purpose, not as a ruler but as a protector of the ocean alongside his brother. Arthur also begins strengthening the connection between Atlantis and the surface world, understanding that cooperation between the two is essential for maintaining balance and preventing misunderstandings that could lead to conflict in the future. He communicates with surface leaders through trusted channels, sharing information about the recent crisis without revealing sensitive details about the ancient technology, while emphasizing the importance of protecting the oceans and respecting the delicate balance that exists beneath the surface. This effort marks a significant shift in how Atlantis interacts with the world above as it moves away from isolation and toward a more cooperative role in global stability. At the same time, Arthur continues balancing his responsibilities as a king with his life as a father and a son, spending time with his family whenever possible and reminding himself that the purpose of his role is not just to lead a kingdom but to protect the people he loves and the world they live in. The lessons learned from Necris remain fresh in his mind, serving as a constant reminder of how quickly things can change when power is misused or when ancient forces are awakened without understanding their consequences. Meanwhile, rumors about Black Manta begin circulating across both the ocean and the surface world as no one knows where he has gone or what he plans to do next, creating an underlying sense of uncertainty because although he is no longer under the influence of Kordax, his desire for revenge may still drive him toward future conflict. Arthur remains aware of this possibility but chooses to focus on strengthening Atlantis and preparing for whatever may come next rather than living in fear of what has already passed. As the kingdom continues evolving and adapting to its new understanding of the world, Arthur stands at the center of this transformation as a leader who has grown through experience and now carries the responsibility of guiding Atlantis into a future where power is balanced with wisdom and where the mistakes of the past are never allowed to threaten the world again. As time continues to pass after the events of Necris, Atlantis enters a new phase of stability and awareness where the kingdom is no longer simply reacting to threats but actively preparing for the future with a deeper understanding of the hidden dangers that exist beneath the ocean. Arthur takes on a more strategic role as king, focusing not only on rebuilding but also on strengthening the systems that protect Atlantis from both known enemies and unknown forces that may still lie buried within the depths. The council works closely with him to establish new divisions dedicated to research, exploration and defense, ensuring that any unusual activity in the ocean is monitored carefully and that knowledge about ancient civilizations is studied responsibly rather than ignored or misused. Orm becomes an essential part of this effort as his understanding of Atlantean history allows him to guide these initiatives in a way that prevents the mistakes of the past from being repeated, and although his presence still carries the weight of his former actions, he begins earning the trust of both the council and the people through his commitment to protecting the ocean rather than controlling it. Arthur's relationship with Orm continues to grow stronger as the two brothers learn to work together not as rivals but as partners who share the same goal of safeguarding the future of Atlantis and maintaining balance between the ocean and the surface world. This transformation in their relationship becomes one of the most important outcomes of their journey because it proves that even the deepest conflicts can be resolved when both sides are willing to change and grow. At the same time, Arthur remains connected to the surface world, spending time with his family and maintaining communication with trusted allies above the ocean, understanding that the future of both worlds is now more connected than ever before and that cooperation will be essential in facing any challenges that may arise. The memory of the chaos caused by the ancient energy of Necris continues to influence his decisions, reminding him that power must always be approached with caution and respect because even the most advanced civilizations can fall when they attempt to control forces beyond their understanding. Meanwhile, reports begin emerging from distant parts of the ocean about unusual activity in regions that were previously unexplored, suggesting that the impact of the recent events may have awakened other hidden areas or revealed secrets that were once buried beneath the depths. Although these reports are not yet confirmed, Arthur takes them seriously and begins organizing new expeditions to investigate these regions carefully, ensuring that any potential threats are identified early and handled responsibly. The uncertainty surrounding Black Manta also remains as his disappearance leaves questions about whether he has truly changed or if he is preparing for another attempt to challenge Aquaman in the future. Arthur remains cautious but does not allow this uncertainty to distract him from his responsibilities as he continues focusing on building a stronger, more united Atlantis that is capable of facing whatever challenges may come next. As the kingdom grows more resilient and aware of its role in the world, Arthur stands as a leader who has learned from the past and is determined to guide his people toward a future where strength is balanced with wisdom and where the lessons of history are never forgotten. As Atlantis moves forward into a new era shaped by the events of Necris, Arthur continues strengthening the foundation of the kingdom not only through physical rebuilding but also by reshaping the mindset of his people, because he understands that true security does not come only from powerful defenses but from awareness, knowledge, and unity among all who live beneath the ocean. The Council begins implementing new systems that encourage cooperation between different underwater kingdoms, creating stronger alliances that ensure any future threats can be faced together rather than individually. Arthur plays a key role in these efforts, traveling to different regions of the ocean to meet with leaders who were once distant or even suspicious of Atlantis and building trust by sharing the lessons learned from the recent crisis. These meetings help establish a new sense of unity across the ocean as more kingdoms begin recognizing that isolation can no longer guarantee safety in a world where ancient powers and hidden dangers still exist. Orm continues assisting Arthur in these efforts, using his understanding of royal traditions and political structures to navigate complex negotiations while also showing a new side of himself as someone who is willing to support unity rather than domination. This transformation surprises many who once feared him but gradually begins earning respect as his actions prove that he has truly changed. Arthur also continues maintaining his connection to the surface world, strengthening communication with trusted allies and ensuring that both sides remain aware of potential threats that could affect the balance between land and sea. This growing cooperation marks a significant shift in how Atlantis interacts with the rest of the world as it begins to take on a more active role in maintaining global stability rather than remaining hidden beneath the waves. At the same time, Arthur faces the challenge of balancing these responsibilities with his personal life as he spends time with his family and reflects on the journey that has brought him to this point, understanding that every decision he makes now carries weight not only for Atlantis but for the entire planet. The memory of the ancient power of Necris continues influencing his leadership, reminding him that even the most advanced civilizations can fall when they misuse power and that it is his responsibility to ensure that such mistakes are never repeated. Meanwhile, reports of unexplained activity in distant regions of the ocean continue to surface, raising questions about whether the events at Necris may have disturbed other hidden areas or awakened forces that have remained dormant for centuries. Arthur takes these reports seriously, organizing new expeditions led by trusted individuals who can investigate these regions with caution and respect for the unknown. The uncertainty surrounding Black Manta also lingers, as no one knows whether he has truly abandoned his path of revenge or if he is simply waiting for the right moment to return, creating an underlying tension that reminds Arthur that peace is something that must be constantly protected rather than assumed. As Atlantis continues evolving into a stronger and more united kingdom, Arthur stands at the center of this transformation as a leader who has grown through experience and now understands that protecting the future requires not only strength but also wisdom, cooperation, and the courage to face whatever challenges may emerge from both the known world and the hidden depths beyond. As Atlantis continues evolving into a more united and forward-thinking kingdom, Arthur begins focusing on creating long-term systems that will ensure stability across both the ocean and the surface world, because he now understands that the events of Necris were not just an isolated crisis but a warning about how easily hidden forces can disrupt the balance of the entire planet. The Council works alongside him to establish new protocols for monitoring ancient sites and unexplored regions of the ocean, using both advanced Atlantean technology and knowledge from historical records to identify areas that may contain dangerous remnants of the past. These efforts are not driven by fear but by a sense of responsibility, as Atlantis takes on a more active role in protecting the world rather than simply reacting to threats when they arise. Orm continues playing a crucial role in these developments as his understanding of ancient civilizations helps guide the research teams toward important discoveries while also ensuring that they approach these areas with caution and respect for the power they may contain. His presence in Atlantis becomes more accepted over time as his actions consistently demonstrate his commitment to protecting the ocean and supporting Arthur's vision for the future. The relationship between the two brothers continues to strengthen as they work together more closely, sharing ideas and responsibilities while also learning from each other's perspectives, which allows them to lead the kingdom with a balance of strength and wisdom that was not possible before. Arthur also expands his efforts to maintain communication with the surface world, recognizing that the future of both civilizations is interconnected and that cooperation will be essential in preventing conflicts and managing global challenges such as environmental changes and emerging threats. These interactions help build trust between Atlantis and surface leaders, creating a foundation for collaboration that could benefit both worlds in the long term. Meanwhile, the memory of the destruction caused by the ancient energy of Necris remains a constant reminder of the importance of understanding the past and respecting the limits of power, because the same mistakes that destroyed that civilization could easily be repeated if the lessons are forgotten. At the same time, new reports continue emerging from distant parts of the ocean, suggesting that the recent events may have revealed additional hidden regions or disturbed other ancient systems that have yet to be fully understood, creating a sense of cautious awareness within Atlantis as it prepares for the possibility of future challenges. The mystery surrounding Black Manta remains unresolved, as his disappearance leaves open the question of whether he will return and what role he may play in the future, adding another layer of uncertainty to the evolving situation. Despite these unknowns, Arthur remains focused on his mission to guide Atlantis toward a future where power is balanced with responsibility and where the kingdom stands as a protector of both the ocean and the surface world rather than a force of isolation or control. As the waters remain calm and the kingdom continues to grow stronger, the story of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom reaches a point where the immediate conflict has ended, but the journey toward a stable and balanced future is just beginning, and Arthur stands ready to face whatever lies ahead with the knowledge and experience he has gained from the challenges he has overcome. As time moves forward after the crisis of Necris, the world slowly begins to settle into a new balance where both Atlantis and the surface civilizations start recovering from the environmental disturbances that once threatened to spiral out of control. The oceans return to a calmer state, the violent storms fade away, and the natural systems of the planet begin stabilizing, which gives Arthur a sense of relief but also reminds him how fragile that balance truly is, because he has now seen firsthand how quickly everything can change when ancient forces are disturbed. Atlantis continues its efforts to rebuild not only physically but also strategically, as new systems of protection, monitoring, and cooperation become a permanent part of the kingdom's structure, ensuring that it is better prepared for any future threats that may arise from either known enemies or hidden remnants of the past. Arthur spends more time working closely with the council and the leaders of other underwater kingdoms, strengthening alliances and encouraging unity across the ocean, because he understands that the strength of Atlantis alone is not enough to guarantee safety in a world where threats can emerge from unexpected places. Orm continues playing a key role in these developments, as his knowledge and experience provide valuable insight into both ancient history and the complexities of leadership, and although his past actions are not forgotten, his contributions during and after the crisis begin to reshape how he is viewed by the people of Atlantis. The bond between Arthur and Orm grows stronger as they continue working together with a sense of mutual respect that was once impossible, and this transformation becomes one of the most important outcomes of their journey, proving that even the deepest conflicts can lead to understanding when both sides are willing to change. Meanwhile, Arthur also maintains his connection to the surface world, spending time with his family and ensuring that communication between Atlantis and human leaders remains open and cooperative, because he knows that the future of both worlds is interconnected and that working together will be essential in preventing future disasters. However, despite the calm that has returned, there is still an underlying sense of uncertainty, as reports of unusual activity in distant parts of the ocean continue to surface, suggesting that the events of Necris may have had a wider impact than initially understood, possibly awakening other hidden regions or altering the balance of the deep sea in ways that are not yet fully known. Arthur remains vigilant in response to these reports, organizing expeditions and research efforts to investigate these areas carefully while ensuring that any discoveries are handled with caution and respect for the potential dangers they may contain. The mystery surrounding Black Manta remains unresolved as his absence leaves open the possibility that he may return in the future either as an enemy seeking revenge once again or as someone changed by the events he experienced, leaving his path uncertain and unpredictable. As Atlantis continues adapting to its new role in the world, Arthur reflects on everything that has happened, realizing that his journey as a king is far from over and that each challenge he faces will continue shaping not only his leadership but also the future of the ocean and the surface world as they move forward together into an uncertain but hopeful new chapter. As the world continues stabilizing after the events of Necris, Arthur finds himself reflecting deeply on the journey that brought him to this point, because the challenges he faced were not only physical battles but also lessons that reshaped his understanding of leadership, responsibility, and the balance between power and wisdom. Atlantis now stands stronger than before, not just in its defenses but in its awareness of the hidden dangers that exist beneath the ocean and the importance of unity among different kingdoms that once operated separately. Arthur spends time working closely with both his council and the leaders of allied underwater nations, creating a system of cooperation that ensures information is shared quickly and effectively so that any potential threats can be identified and addressed before they grow into something uncontrollable. This new approach marks a significant shift in how Atlantis functions as it moves away from isolation and toward becoming a central force for maintaining balance across the oceans. Orm continues to play a vital role in this transformation, offering his knowledge of ancient history and strategic thinking to help guide decisions that affect not only Atlantis but the entire underwater world. And although his past actions still linger in the minds of some, his continued efforts to protect rather than dominate gradually rebuild his place within the kingdom as someone who has changed and found a new purpose. The relationship between Arthur and Orm becomes one of partnership and mutual respect as they learn to combine their strengths and perspectives, creating a leadership dynamic that is far more balanced and effective than either of them could achieve alone. Meanwhile, Arthur also remains connected to the surface world, maintaining communication with his family and trusted allies while ensuring that both sides remain aware of potential dangers that could affect the delicate balance between land and sea. This connection becomes increasingly important as global systems continue recovering from the disturbances caused by the ancient energy, and cooperation between civilizations proves essential in managing the long-term effects of the crisis. Despite the calm that has returned, Arthur remains aware that peace is not something that can be taken for granted, because the lessons of Necris have shown him that even the most hidden and forgotten parts of history can rise again with devastating consequences if they are not understood and respected. Reports of unusual activity in distant regions continue to reach Atlantis, suggesting that the ocean still holds many secrets waiting to be uncovered, and Arthur responds by organizing careful exploration efforts that prioritize safety and knowledge over ambition, ensuring that any discoveries are handled responsibly. The mystery of Black Manta remains unresolved, adding an element of uncertainty to the future as no one knows whether he will return as an enemy or if his experience has changed him in ways that could alter his path moving forward. As Arthur stands overlooking the vast ocean, he understands that his journey as Aquaman and as king is far from complete, and that each challenge he faces will continue shaping not only his destiny but the future of both the ocean and the surface world as they move together into a new era defined by the lessons of the past and the hope for a more balanced and united future. As Atlantis enters a period of relative peace after the chaos of Necris, Arthur begins to fully embrace the long-term responsibilities of being king, understanding that his role is no longer defined only by battles against enemies but by the continuous effort to maintain balance, protect knowledge, and guide his people toward a stable future where the mistakes of the past are not repeated. The kingdom continues to grow stronger not just in its physical structure but in its unity as different underwater clans and allied kingdoms begin working together more closely than ever before, sharing resources, information and strategies that ensure the ocean remains prepared for any potential threats that may arise from hidden regions or unknown forces beneath the depths. Arthur spends much of his time overseeing these developments while also making sure that the connection between Atlantis and the surface world remains strong, because he knows that both civilizations are now more connected than ever and that cooperation will be essential in facing future challenges. Orm continues to stand beside him as an advisor and ally, offering insight into both ancient traditions and strategic decision-making while also proving through his actions that he has moved beyond his past ambitions and is now committed to protecting the ocean rather than controlling it. This transformation in Orm's character becomes a powerful example for others within Atlantis, showing that even those who once followed a path of conflict can change and contribute to a better future. Arthur also begins encouraging a new generation of Atlanteans to study the history of their world, including the rise and fall of civilizations like Necris, not as a warning of fear but as a lesson in responsibility, teaching them that power must always be balanced with wisdom and that understanding the past is the key to protecting the future. Meanwhile, the ocean continues revealing small signs that not everything has returned completely to normal, as subtle disturbances and unexplained signals are detected in distant regions, suggesting that the events of Necris may have left behind lingering effects or uncovered other hidden areas that were previously sealed away. Arthur takes these signs seriously and ensures that investigation teams are sent to explore these regions carefully, with strict instructions to observe and understand rather than interfere unnecessarily, because he knows that acting without knowledge could lead to repeating the same mistakes that caused so much destruction before. The uncertainty surrounding Black Manta still remains, as no clear information about his location or intentions has been discovered, leaving open the possibility that he may return in the future, either as an enemy seeking revenge or as someone changed by the events he experienced. Arthur remains prepared for both possibilities, choosing not to let fear control his decisions but instead focusing on building a strong and united Atlantis that can face any challenge with confidence. As he stands overlooking the vast ocean, he reflects on everything he has learned, realizing that being a true king means constantly adapting, learning and protecting not only his people but the entire world that depends on the balance between land and sea. And with this understanding, he moves forward, ready to face whatever challenges may come next, knowing that the journey of Aquaman is far from over. As Atlantis continues moving forward into a new era of awareness and stability, Arthur begins focusing on shaping a future that is not only secure but also guided by wisdom and cooperation, because he now understands that the strength of a kingdom is measured not just by its power but by its ability to adapt, learn and protect the balance of the world. The systems established after the events of Necris begin functioning effectively as monitoring networks across the ocean detect even the smallest disturbances, allowing Atlantis to respond quickly and prevent potential threats from developing into larger crises. The research teams, guided by Orm, continue exploring ancient sites, carefully documenting their findings and ensuring that any remnants of dangerous technology are either secured or left undisturbed, depending on the risk they pose. This approach reflects a major shift in how Atlantis views its past, as it no longer ignores or hides ancient history but instead studies it responsibly to prevent the repetition of catastrophic mistakes. Arthur remains actively involved in these efforts, often joining discussions and reviewing reports to ensure that every decision aligns with the goal of maintaining balance rather than seeking power for its own sake. His leadership style evolves further as he learns to rely on both his instincts and the knowledge of those around him, creating a more collaborative environment within the kingdom where ideas and perspectives are valued equally. Orm continues to play a key role in this transformation, offering insights that help bridge the gap between traditional Atlantean values and the modern approach that Arthur represents, and together they create a leadership dynamic that is both strong and balanced, allowing Atlantis to move forward with confidence. Meanwhile, the connection between Atlantis and the surface world grows stronger as communication channels remain open and cooperative efforts begin to address global challenges such as environmental changes and ocean conservation, showing that the two civilizations can work together for the benefit of the entire planet. Arthur also continues spending time with his family on the surface, finding moments of peace that remind him why he fights to protect both worlds, and these experiences help ground him as a leader, ensuring that his decisions are guided not only by duty but also by empathy and understanding. However, despite the progress and stability, there remains an underlying awareness that the ocean still holds many secrets, as occasional unexplained signals and disturbances continue to appear in distant regions, suggesting that the events of Necris may have triggered changes that are not yet fully understood. Arthur remains vigilant in response to these signs, organizing careful investigations while ensuring that caution remains a priority in every action taken by Atlantis. The mystery of Black Manta still lingers, as no clear information about his fate has surfaced, leaving open the possibility that his story is not yet over and that his return could bring new challenges in the future. As Atlantis continues evolving into a kingdom that values both strength and wisdom, Arthur stands at its center as a leader who has grown through experience and now understands that protecting the future requires constant effort, awareness, and the willingness to face whatever lies hidden beneath the surface of both the ocean and the world beyond. As Atlantis continues to grow stronger and more aware of its role in maintaining the balance of the world, Arthur begins to look beyond immediate concerns and focus on building a legacy that will guide future generations, because he understands that true leadership is not only about solving present problems but also about preparing those who will come after him to handle challenges that may arise long after his time. The kingdom becomes a center of learning as scholars, historians, and explorers work together to study both the past and the evolving conditions of the ocean, ensuring that knowledge is preserved and shared rather than lost or hidden as it once was with civilizations like Necris. Arthur supports these efforts by encouraging transparency and cooperation among different regions of Atlantis and allied kingdoms, creating a culture where information flows freely and decisions are made with a deeper understanding of the consequences they may carry. Orm plays a significant role in this transformation as well, using his experience and knowledge to help guide these initiatives while also mentoring younger Atlanteans who seek to understand the history and responsibilities of leadership. His presence becomes a symbol of change within the kingdom, demonstrating that even those who once followed a path of conflict can contribute to building a better future when they choose to learn from their mistakes. Arthur's connection with the surface world continues to strengthen as well as he works to ensure that both civilizations remain aligned in their efforts to protect the environment and prevent conflicts that could arise from misunderstanding or fear. This cooperation begins to show positive results as joint efforts lead to improvements in ocean conservation and global stability, reinforcing the idea that unity between land and sea is not only possible but necessary for the long-term survival of both worlds. However, despite these positive developments, Arthur remains aware that the ocean still holds many unknowns, as occasional reports of unusual activity continue to emerge, suggesting that the disturbances caused by the events of Necris may have revealed deeper layers of the underwater world that have yet to be fully explored or understood. These signs serve as a reminder that the work of protecting the balance is never truly complete and that vigilance must remain a constant part of Atlantis's efforts moving forward. The unresolved fate of Black Manta continues to linger in the background as a symbol of unfinished business, leaving open the possibility that his story may intersect with Arthur's again in the future in ways that could challenge everything they have built. As Arthur stands at the edge of Atlantis looking out over the vast ocean, he reflects on the journey that has brought him here, from a hero struggling to find his place to a king who now carries the responsibility of guiding an entire world toward a more balanced future. And with that understanding, he remains ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead, knowing that the true test of his leadership will not be a single battle but the ability to maintain peace, stability, and wisdom in a world that is constantly changing. As the journey of Atlantis continues into a future shaped by both the lessons of the past and the challenges of the present, Arthur begins to fully understand the deeper meaning of his role as king, because it is no longer just about protecting his kingdom from threats but about guiding an entire world toward balance where power, knowledge and responsibility exist together without leading to destruction. The changes that have taken place since the fall of Necris become more visible as Atlantis transforms into a center of unity where different underwater kingdoms collaborate more closely than ever before, sharing resources, ideas and strategies that strengthen the ocean as a whole rather than focusing only on individual interests. Arthur encourages this unity by maintaining open communication and building trust among leaders who once operated independently, showing them that cooperation is the key to long-term stability in a world where hidden dangers can emerge from unexpected places. Orm continues standing beside him as a trusted ally and advisor, using his experience to help navigate complex decisions while also proving through his actions that he has moved beyond his past ambitions and is now committed to protecting the ocean alongside his brother. This partnership becomes a symbol of change within Atlantis, demonstrating that even the strongest conflicts can lead to understanding when both sides are willing to grow and adapt. Arthur also continues strengthening the connection between Atlantis and the surface world, working with human leaders to address global challenges and ensure that both civilizations remain aligned in their efforts to protect the planet. This cooperation leads to improvements in areas such as environmental protection and resource management, showing that the relationship between land and sea can evolve into something beneficial for both sides rather than a source of conflict. However, even as the world moves towards stability, Arthur remains aware that the ocean still holds many secrets, as subtle disturbances and unexplained signals continue to appear in distant regions, reminding him that the effects of the ancient energy may not be fully understood yet and that there could still be hidden dangers waiting to be discovered. He responds to these signs with caution, organizing exploration efforts that prioritize understanding and safety over ambition, ensuring that any new discoveries are handled responsibly and do not lead to the same mistakes that caused the destruction of Necris. The mystery surrounding Black Manta remains unresolved, adding a sense of uncertainty to the future as his absence leaves open the possibility that he may return at any time, bringing new challenges that could test everything Arthur has worked to build. Despite these uncertainties, Arthur remains focused on his mission to lead Atlantis with wisdom and strength, understanding that the true measure of a king is not in the battles he wins but in the stability and balance he creates for his people and the world around him. As he stands overlooking the ocean, he reflects on how far he has come, realizing that his journey is far from over and that the future will continue to test his ability to protect both the ocean and the surface world while ensuring that the mistakes of the past are never repeated again. As the story continues moving toward its conclusion, Arthur's journey as both Aquaman and the King of Atlantis reaches a point where his growth becomes clearly visible, not just in his strength but in his understanding of what it truly means to lead, because the events surrounding the lost kingdom of Necris have changed him in ways that go far beyond a single battle and have reshaped his perspective on power, responsibility and the importance of unity across different worlds. Atlantis now stands stronger and more united than ever before, with its people working together not only to rebuild what was damaged but to create a future where knowledge of the past is respected and used to prevent similar disasters from ever happening again. Arthur continues guiding this transformation by encouraging cooperation among the underwater kingdoms, ensuring that alliances remain strong and that communication between them is open and effective so that any potential threat can be addressed collectively rather than individually. Orm remains an important part of this new era as his role evolves into that of a protector and advisor who helps maintain balance within Atlantis while also supporting Arthur's vision of unity rather than domination, and his journey from a rival to a trusted ally becomes one of the most meaningful changes within the story, demonstrating that even those who once stood in opposition can grow and contribute to a better future when they choose to learn from their mistakes. Arthur's connection to the surface world also continues to strengthen as he works to ensure that both civilizations understand each other better and cooperate in maintaining the balance of the planet, creating a bridge between land and sea that did not exist before and showing that the future of both worlds is deeply interconnected. However, even as stability returns, there remains an underlying awareness that the ocean still holds many mysteries and that the events of Necris may have only revealed a small part of what lies hidden beneath the depths. Arthur remains vigilant in response to this understanding, organizing careful exploration and research efforts while ensuring that any discoveries are approached with caution and respect rather than ambition or greed. The unresolved fate of Black Manta continues to linger as a reminder that not all conflicts are fully resolved and that some challenges may return in unexpected ways, leaving open the possibility for future encounters that could test Arthur's leadership once again. As the world continues to recover and Atlantis moves forward into this new era, Arthur reflects on the journey that brought him here, realizing that being a king is not about controlling everything but about guiding, protecting and learning from every experience so that the future can be built on a foundation of wisdom rather than power alone. Standing at the edge of the ocean, he looks toward the horizon, understanding that the story of Aquaman is far from over and that the challenges ahead will continue shaping not only his destiny but the future of the world he has sworn to protect. As the story moves into its final phase, Arthur stands as a king who has fully embraced the responsibilities that come with his role, and the transformation he has undergone since the beginning of his journey becomes clear because he is no longer the uncertain leader trying to balance two worlds but someone who now understands how deeply connected those worlds truly are and how important it is to protect that connection. Atlantis has become a symbol of unity and strength not just for the ocean but for the entire planet as its people work together with a shared purpose, guided by the lessons learned from the rise and fall of Necris and the dangers of misusing power. Arthur continues to lead with a sense of awareness that every decision he makes carries consequences not only for his kingdom but for the balance of the world, and this understanding shapes the way he approaches challenges, ensuring that wisdom and caution are always part of his actions. Orm remains by his side as an ally whose journey from a former enemy to a trusted advisor reflects one of the most powerful themes of the story, showing that redemption is possible when individuals are willing to change and accept responsibility for their past. Together, the two brothers represent a new kind of leadership for Atlantis, one that combines strength with understanding and tradition with adaptability, allowing the kingdom to move forward in a way that is both stable and progressive. Arthur also continues nurturing his connection to the surface world, maintaining relationships with his family and working to strengthen cooperation between humans and Atlanteans because he knows that the future depends on both sides learning to coexist and support each other rather than remaining divided by fear or misunderstanding. The world itself begins to show signs of recovery as the oceans stabilize and the environmental damage caused by the ancient energy gradually fades, although the memory of how close everything came to collapse remains as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and responsibility. At the same time, subtle hints of unresolved mysteries continue to exist as the ocean still holds many secrets that have yet to be uncovered, and the lingering uncertainty surrounding Black Manta suggests that the past may not be entirely behind them, leaving the possibility of future challenges open. Arthur accepts this reality, understanding that his journey is not about reaching a final destination but about continuously adapting and growing as new challenges arise and as the world changes around him. Standing at the heart of Atlantis, he reflects on everything he has experienced, realizing that the true strength of a king lies not in his ability to defeat enemies but in his ability to protect balance, inspire unity and learn from the past so that the future can be shaped in a way that benefits all who share the world. With this understanding, he looks ahead, ready to face whatever lies beyond the horizon, knowing that the legacy he is building will continue long after the battles have ended. As the story reaches its closing moments, Arthur's journey as Aquaman and King of Atlantis becomes a symbol of growth, balance and responsibility, because everything he has faced, from the rise of Black Manta to the destruction of the lost kingdom of Necris, has shaped him into a leader who now understands that true power is not about control but about protecting the harmony between different worlds. Atlantis stands stronger than ever, not only because of its defenses but because of the unity that now exists among its people and its allies as the underwater kingdoms work together in ways they never did before, creating a network of cooperation that ensures the ocean remains stable and prepared for any challenges that may come in the future. Arthur continues guiding this new era with confidence while also remaining grounded in his connection to his family and the surface world, reminding himself that his purpose is not only to rule but to protect and serve both sides of the world that he belongs to. Orm remains by his side as a trusted ally, and his transformation from a rival to a protector becomes a powerful reminder that change is possible even for those who once stood on the opposite side of conflict, and together they represent a balanced leadership that combines strength, wisdom, and understanding. The lessons of Necris remain deeply embedded in the foundation of Atlantis as a constant reminder of what can happen when power is misused and why it is essential to respect the limits of knowledge and technology rather than seeking to dominate them. The ocean itself begins to feel alive with renewed balance as marine life returns fully